Well, Sweta Chakraborty is a fellow at the Centre for Climate and Security in Washington, D.C. and joins us now. Sweta, hello.
Hi there. Hello.
Lots to talk about. First of all, what is exactly then a polar vortex?
Right. So that name just sounds, as graphic as the headlines that you just shared. It refers to a frigid, low-pressure air mass, and normally this air mass spins counterclockwise around the North Pole. Recent years, we've been hearing a lot more about this term because this air mass seems to be increasingly migrating down from the Arctic, where its home is, to the mid-latitudes. I personally was living in New York City in 2014. That's when the term was becoming really popular. And it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 15 Celsius, since we're in the UK. And I remember how scared I felt just walking a couple of blocks because you stop being able to feel your face when you're in that type of frigid cold. And it wasn't even as close to as cold as it is now. So this year it settled over the Great Lakes regions in America, and it's causing these extreme sub-zero conditions. It's getting to negative 20 Celsius and worse. And that's not even taking into account the wind chill, which is one of the headlines was just referring to. That's what the cold actually feels like against your skin.
And when we hear warnings, as we mentioned earlier, about people don't breathe too deeply or don't talk too much while you're outside, they sound absolutely terrifying. What effects could it have on a person?
The most obvious effects are frostbite. When you have wind chill at this temperature, at these numbers, you can reach frostbite in just a few minutes. And now you're talking about losing limbs potentially. You can have hypothermia, which is a condition that just would take you out from freezing to death. So there's some real impacts. There's real health impacts associated with these frigid cold temperatures.
And Donald Trump's got involved. Sweta, I don't know if you've seen his tweet. He says, in the beautiful Midwest, wind chill temperatures are reaching minus 60, the coldest ever recorded. In coming days, it's expected to get even colder. People can't last outside even for minutes. What the hell is going on with global warming? Please come back fast. We need you. How helpful is a tweet like that?
Right. So, it's moronic statements like that by him and other pundits that really just continue to create this confusion around the difference between weather and climate. And weather is when you have, extreme events over short periods of time. Climate is when these events can be averaged out over longer periods of time. And we know that because the planet is warming, several things are coming out of it, including what we're experiencing right now, this polar vortex extreme. And it's because that we have this spinning air mass in the Arctic is losing its structural integrity. The jet stream also, because the planet is warming, is weakening. And normally that keeps these weather systems in place and it moves them along. But this is basically what's going on is like the Arctic warming is as if the freezer doors are being thrown open and this cold air is being let out. It's traveling south, and that barrier that normally protects between distinct pressure systems, between hot and cold, something we've grown accustomed to because our climate's been relatively stable, because that is being changed because the planet is warming, we're experiencing this frigid cold coming down where it normally wouldn't this month.
Sweta, thank you very much for talking us through that. Good to speak to you. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
There we are, Sweta Chakraborty from the Centre for Climate and Security in Washington, D.C.